And hello, Becky.
Hello.
It's my privilege to be talking to Becky today because we only first got to speak to each other. We'd known each other from social media, but that was only a few months ago when you were in Wales, weren't you? You were in
Yep.
Wales then?
From Wales then, yeah.
Absolutely. But Becky is probably best known for the incredible amount of work she's done in Portsmouth to make Portsmouth the most entrepreneurial town or city in the UK. I always think that for young enterprise, it's the city of Hull. But Portsmouth, and one of the reasons for that is that Becky has got the, what can I call it, the top digital channel really for startups called Startup Disruptors. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And
Yeah.
which is a quality that I've always dreamt of in terms of for startups. It's absolutely amazing. But Becky's own story is quite interesting because she gave up a corporate job for really to help neurodiverse people, didn't you? And you've done tremendous amount of work in helping women business owners, neurodiversity as well as all fantastic work for startups and entrepreneurs. But today we thought we'd actually talk a little bit about mental health, really, and particularly in startups, and particularly in terms of actually reaching out for help, really, and how we do that. And there is no better person than Becky to tell us that. So my first question really is just tell us what was the passion really that started you off in trying to do something in this whole area where you gave up a incredibly successful corporate position, didn't you, to actually just tell us about that. What was the motivation for you to do that?
I think in 2008, when the first financial crash actually happened, I had a really bad episode with my own mental health.
Yeah,
So I'd been in corporate for a really long time, very much protected, very much supported, very much used to be working as a very niche international sales team as a
yeah,
sales director for a radio broadcast software company, which for a woman is interstellar because technology isn't known for its diversity and inclusion.
yeah,
So really, the mental slog of actually performing at that level over the best part of 15, 20 years, I think had taken its toll because I wasn't paying enough attention to myself and my own needs. I was endlessly hitting targets. I was going out there really, really trying to keep on proving and working really hard to actually achieve what I wanted to achieve in my career. And when I got made redundant because they were an American company and they took all of the staff and just basically binned them on the same day in the UK. I was left bereft really because I had this massive gaping void where my career had once sat. And for about 2 years, I was really not very well. I had problems with panic attacks and agoraphobia. I also really struggled with going outdoors with social interaction, which was totally out of character for me. I had been always quite a social person, quite outgoing, considered to be quite extroverted. And I really, really struggled. And for a long time, for about 12 months or so, I couldn't go out of the house. And I literally had to remedy that by going to the end of the cul-de-sac where we were currently living, walking the dog that we had at the time, and building it up each day. So really, I could only walk 50 to 100 yards, and then went to the paper shop, then built up my social confidence again. So having struggled with that, I went back and worked part time, and then built up to a full time career again. And literally was working for a really, really successful small business, an SME, family owned and led. And I looked out the window one day and I just thought, I don't want to do this anymore. I've got everything back that I thought that I valued, and basically realised that there was no value in it. There was
right.
nothing filling up my kind of heart. There was nothing filling up my soul. I was making no decent contribution to society. I've been making other people extremely rich for a very, very long time. So from my point of view, I just literally thought, I don't want to, from this moment on, continue making other people rich. Other people who were starting businesses at that time, I could see hadn't got help or advice, and also they couldn't afford help and advice. So having had a degree and being Chartered Institute of Marketing qualified, having a lot of experience in this space, I thought, well, okay, I'll just have my notice in, go home. Told my husband, who was appalled, said, you've got bills, we've got a mortgage, woman, what are you doing? And I just said, it's fine, because if it doesn't work out, I'll go back, because I left the door open at my previous employer. I just started to experiment, talking to people in pubs, talking to people starting up businesses, anybody that would listen, went and accessed a lot of free support for businesses, and really didn't realise what an absolute crapshoot it was in terms of just people being very transactional in their behaviour, basically screwing over, their community for £20, and the charlatans in the local market exploiting women and neurodiverse people, especially for money. So I thought,
and rubbish advice as well. Rubbish advice as well from people
really
selling
poor.
wrong.
I mean, the advice was so poor, and with all respect to the public sector, you meet a lot of very well-meaning employees, but they've never run businesses, so they don't understand what it takes. And also, because I had such a vast history in building other organisations through sales teams in corporate and in SME, I just thought, well, why not give that a go? Why not see if we can just help people? And we started with 9 people in a pub just off Osborne Road in Southsea, if anybody knows it. And we built a Facebook group to 2,000 people in less than 18 months. We then were luckily backed by Uber. So Uber, very early on, I was sort of having a bit of a moment, sort of crying in a cafe, saying that nobody would help me because we were trying to change everything in sort of 2016. And the head of cities then for Uber just said, that's okay. What do you need? You just really, people won't like you because you're trying to change things. The advice that you give is just fantastic. You do need to think about charging for it, though. You really need to think about charging for it. And I just thought, this is what I'm here to do. And that's a very sort of roundabout way of answering the question. But I think I got frustrated, like many entrepreneurs do, that what they need is support and encouragement, and what they actually get is almost a slap in the face, because neurodiversity is a new saying, and I suppose we ought to quantify what that actually means. Neurodiversity is labelled as special educational needs in school, and it's often used for people that have ADHD or autism spectrum disorders, and also dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia. And over entrepreneurs in the UK are 600% more likely to have ADHD. Okay. So this is the world that we're sitting in, and I just couldn't believe that there was just no empathy around that. There was very much, well, come in, sit your bum down, come on our fantastic business course, we'll get paid money from this government pot, but we don't care whether your business is sustainable once we've given you the initial advice. And I was sort of saying, well, if you're talking about adding value and what they call GVA into the local economy, you need to learn to care. Yes. Because if these people don't build sustainable businesses and they're gone, and 80% fail within the first 5 years, as you and I both know.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's going to happen? What's going to happen to our communities? What's going to happen to our high streets?
By the way, there's no justification for that, is there, Becky? That's the failure rate is just, 80% survival rate is actually possible with the right support and encouragement, so you're absolutely right. It's a disgrace, really. Sorry.
No, and really that's what it stemmed from. So I got a lot of criticism. I still get a lot of criticism. I get a lot of trolling, a lot of hate on social. I got a lot of face-to-face hate when I first started from people. A very senior gentleman once said to me, "What gives you the right to do this?" And I said, "What gives you the right? Just because you're employed by somebody and you're delivering business support doesn't actually make it your right." So I think the private sector can do a lot of great things. And I think that our mantra, and eventually as and when we build, and we've already started to scale, we're looking at attaining B Corp status. So we are profit with, purpose.
Yes.
And you can lead a company like that. You can create something like that. And I think that that's what people are looking for now. And I think that when we look at our future generations into Gen Z, or even millennials, they want to work for purpose-led businesses. And
Yes.
if you don't have a clear value and you don't have a clear mission, you're going to be very much in trouble very quickly.
Yeah.
And all these, I get criticized a lot because people say, it's a very American way of looking at things. You're talking about things, you're too transparent. And I just keep explaining that digital makes everything transparent. You can't hide anymore. So if you're not showing who you are, then you're going to be left behind. And disruption for me is all about delivering something in a new and innovative way. It doesn't necessarily have to be about creating a new technology or creating the next best Uber, although we'd love that to happen in this country a bit more, and we're happy to help people fund that. But I think it's just being a good human being is what we should be aiming to do more of, and helping one another. And that's really why I started.
Fabulous. Just a couple of points there. Before digital came around, because obviously I'm very old, but and we started our business 30 odd years ago, and Claire Francis, my partner, and I were again, even then, appalled by the quality of advice from the public sector and various things. It was just awful, and we started trying to do something about it, but we realized that we needed somebody in our business that was a business owner, somebody who'd done it, got the t-shirt. And so for a year we worked with somebody who was running a recruitment consultancy that had been around for a while, and he was a director of our business and we were directors of his business for a year, and then we stopped it. And his words then were, never have to cross the street to avoid someone. In other words, what he was saying is everything you do from day one will create your credibility. Now, what you've said about digital is absolutely amplified, isn't it? And so it's really encouraging that the millennials, if you like, want to be with a business with a purpose. They want to be honest. They want to be truthful. They want to be, I created, which I've handed over to the Organisation of Responsible Business, Smallest Beautiful Roll of Honour, which, is a bit like B Corp, if you like. And it is so encouraging that there is somewhere that you've created that is available to people, so that they don't have to believe all the myths and all the stuff that's going on, or they've got to adopt some persona that is not themselves, never mind dealing just with neurodiversity. And the second thing I'd like to say is that we've just started in Hull. My fellow dyspraxic friend Charles Cracknell has just started a competition in Hull for school kids to actually draw images of neurodiversity. And they're going to be these pictures are going to be exhibited in Hull's major art gallery and various things like that. And that's the other tremendous thing. I'm so pleased that you touched on it, because if not us, then who? Kind of thing. So I think absolutely wonderful. What would you say to somebody that, I've got a family on the autism spectrum, as you would expect. See, I was their father. But basically, what would you say to somebody that is thinking at the moment, it's probably low on confidence, been talking a lot about the low on confidence, if you like. The neurodiverse as such, they but they really don't think an employed job is the way to go for them, and they do have something that they take high happypreneurship. They want to be useful. They want to do something where they actually feel useful, because that's where they get fulfillment. What would you say are the first steps they should take to actually getting to the point where they, can at some stage start that business that they wanted to do? What are
Yeah.
the first things that they need to do? So, here I am, and like, my parents have got no interest in me. They actually think that, I should get a proper job and whatever. But I want to, I don't know, I want to set up a gaming shop, or, I want to do something different and different. What would you say to them?
Yeah, so I would actually say, stop overthinking it and actually get on with it. I think the biggest barriers to people who are neurodiverse, and let's be honest here, there's a strong chance that I've certainly got ADD. My sister is massively dyslexic, and as you said, it's intergenerational. So, the ramifications of what we're doing are very, very important. And what I want to say first of all is, just because somebody's neurodiverse doesn't mean that they're thick. And I get fed up time and time again, and I speak a lot in education about, if the system doesn't allow people to thrive, the system has to change. And I think that, especially speaking from my own experience in school, of being classed as gifted in one area and not in another, gives out terrible messaging. So confidence is the thing that most people really struggle with, because they've often been battered by a system that doesn't suit their learning style, or their needs, or their psychological needs, unless they've been in a school that can deal with that. And a lot of women are left in mainstream because they don't actually exhibit the clinical signs of what the box says should be a tick for somebody. So we've got almost generations of undiagnosed people who are very confused. So confidence can often be a barrier, because they have to build that confidence before even thinking about things like, I'd like to start a business. So we're doing actually a women's empowerment workshop in Portsmouth with a charity called Urbond, who do a lot in emerging market child education. And we're talking about this, and we're actually opening up workshops, so people can come in, and actually, to have that confidence even to walk through the door is a really big ask of somebody, especially early on. But connecting, I think, to the right people who are in that safe space of advocacy is really important. So obviously everybody's blessed in Hull that they've got you as a sort of a moniker for doing stupendous things in this area. But what we don't have is that consistency across the country. And so from my point of view, we were setting out to provide that banner of safety to say, if you come here, we understand what it is that you do. We understand how you're made. We actually agree with a little bit of tough love, because we do have people that will come and say, hey, I'm going to borrow a ton of money and I'm going to set up a gaming shop. And we're like, no, how no? That's not what you're going to do, because you don't have any of the knowledge in order to be able to do that yet. And also, you have to be commercially aware and financially aware. And people with ADHD often have issues around debt and spending, impulse control, and emotional regulation. So we look very much at, we're not prescriptive and we're not mental health experts. It's just that because we're a community of people who are built the same way, we very much understand what our mistakes were, so we can share those mistakes with others. And people then can naturally build confidence that way. So I would say, don't rush at it. Your parents will always think that you're a bit nuts. I remember when I started Startup Disruptors, my mum, I love her to pieces. She's my biggest advocate, and she's a baby boomer, so she's 74. So I said, Mum, I'm thinking of starting a startup support group called Startup Disruptors. And her response was this: oh, I'm not sure about the name. I don't think many people are going to like it. And I thought, big tick box, that's absolutely going to work then. So my mum was really pivotal in me doing my market research around naming something that people won't like. That's absolutely the way my brain works.
Yeah.
But for us, and I would say people look at me and say, well, you're hugely confident. I'm not. I'm a raging introvert. I still get socially anxious when I go into rooms, although I've been practicing it my whole life. So I probably look a little bit less like I'm crapping myself, for want of a better phrase. But I think you have to be honest about your struggles in order to inspire others. What we didn't have, and you probably see the same, is we don't have those role models for women, and we don't have those role models for diverse communities. And we need to be talking about that more and exhibiting more of that, and that kind of open door policy, I think, is critical. So in answer to your question, don't be afraid to reach out. And this is the main topic of what you and I are talking about today, is nobody's going to steal your idea. Nobody cares. Honestly, nobody cares. Nobody is going to be able to execute on that idea in the way that you can, because as you know, Tony, people buy into you and who you are, so they'll follow you. It's about thought leadership. And thirdly, I would say trust is very important in business, but trusting the right people is critical. So actually finding that community and finding your tribe is really important. And digitally was where that gap was for us, because we know that lots of neurodiverse people are really into the digital space. They're often gamers, they're often at home in their back bedroom like this with their thumbs going, and they're not great social communicators. So, but they're really brilliant communicators, through text or through Facebook Messenger. They're very erudite, they're very educated a lot of the time. But they come unstuck when they come into a room and they have to talk to somebody. And what I say is, just because you can write a novel on WhatsApp doesn't mean that you can get into a room with people and socially norm, and that can be hard for people. But that place of no judgment is what we created, which was, we don't really kind of care how weird you think you are. We've seen weirder. And you won't feel like that is a place of acceptance. And I think that's really huge.
I mean, just to take that point, and I want to hold it just for 1 second, because I think that reach out, find your tribe is kind of absolutely fantastic advice. And so my next question would be, how do they get in touch with your digital community?
Yeah, so we're
how do so somebody in I'm in Scarborough at the moment, in Yorkshire in business. So somebody in Scarborough that says, God, I relate to everything that Becky has just said, but how do I find that tribe? So how could they get in touch with your digital community or the Facebook group, or just tell us that and say how they can do it?
Yeah, so what we did was we created an online brand called Startup Disruptors, and it was born on social media channels. So if you look on anything, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, just put in Startup Disruptors as it's spelled here, and you'll find us, and you can follow us. So what I will say is, we're actually an entrepreneurship education community, which is a posh way of saying we teach people how to build really good businesses. And weirdly, we like to give everything away for free. So if you follow us on social, we post up great advice. We do YouTube videos. So we film our members and small business owners that will give advice to you totally for free. So if you're in that pre-startup market research phase, please take the advice of people that have gone before and watch those videos on our Startup Disruptors channel. The way that we work, it's very simple. We have a 2-hour online meeting every month. You subscribe, a bit like Netflix, with termed the Netflix of entrepreneurship education. You pay $19.99 a month for the Facebook group. If you want the online meeting for 2 hours where you get introduced to mentors, sponsors, we can help you develop sales, that's $99.99 a month. We've just put up our pricing this year because of our levels of success. And we know that when people reach that stage and they're a little bit more serious about things, we can then help connect them to suppliers that are trusted. Also, our sponsors have lots of information. So I use that, bandy that word around. We're backed by the University of Portsmouth Business School. We're backed now by Essex University, and we're rolling out this model linked to universities throughout the UK as well. We're also backed by a couple of venture capital companies. So they're the people that actually fund the next best things in technology. So one of those is a company called Notion Capital based in London, and one called Faster Capital based in Dubai. We're also building out our funding relationships with people like Funding Circle. So from our point of view, everything we do exists in the online space. Right. We do physical meetups from time to time for cups of tea in the Solent region, but we've kind of moved away from that since obviously the pandemic hit. But I would say to anybody, follow us on social because it's more beneficial to you.
Following on social.
And you get free stuff. So, why would you not do? And the free stuff's good. That's the difference. The free stuff's not
point, isn't it? Yeah. Start. Yeah, and I was talking to Jan Cavell earlier. I don't know if you know her. And we were talking. She was saying that the whole success, really, of successful selling, for example, for a startup, is actually confidence and credibility. Anyway, it's confidence, credibility, and connections, and various things, and that's why almost the first step is reaching out, because you need to actually find some people in that community, in that tribe, that are going to start. I know a wonderful guy called Ben Robinson in Hull, and he had with the team there of Hull Youth Enterprise, he had 125 counselling sessions with different people before he actually got the point where he had enough confidence to do what is now, and it sounds absolutely crazy, but he was into snakes and lizards and various things like that, and he's now got his own sort of visitor attraction in Hull and the retail, etc. But it took all of that time and all of those supportive people doing different counselling sessions to get to that point where he'd got the confidence and whatever. So the first step is get into that Facebook group, isn't it? It's like, go on social, get to chat to some people, actually find your way through it. And that research is as important, isn't it, as your product idea or your, that research of the people can actually help you and create that. That's brilliant.
I think with neurodiversity, they really underestimate what we call social capital, which is the network that you exist within. And people are shocked when I say to them, honestly, you can have a Facebook page and make 85k a year without a website, without anything else. Yeah. So don't believe the mythology in the market that people are pumping out about you've got to have a website, you've got to have this, they're trying to sell you what you don't need yet. Yes. And also what I would actually say is and people are terrified of university because education has told them their whole lives that they don't belong. Yes. But I would caution people here and say, you're a grown-up now. Things are different. You're an adult. Actually going to your local university, whoever that university is, especially if they've got one with a business school, they will have so many free resources to give you that is the best kept secret of everything in the UK. We've so far put 13 female entrepreneurs through a full service, almost like mini business school with the University of Portsmouth Business School to help them test trial their project. Our business, my business, was shaped through their free service called a business consultancy project, which is a very posh way of saying helping you plan stuff. It was totally free. There was 6 undergraduates from international business that looked at this and said, it's going to work. We'll model it for you. This is how you make your money. Free. Yeah. Now, why don't people talk about this? Why are people still really struggling around, oh, well, Bob says that this is really great, so I'll buy his service. Well, Bob's about to get really rich. They're selling you something that's rubbish. So really don't rely on word of mouth without doing your research, because we saw a couple of our women, one was rinsed with 20 grand for a new website. That was her seed fund, startup money gone. And we had another networking group locally that is very well known nationally, take somebody for 3 grand for a year's worth of stuff. She was actually into high-end corporate clinical psychology, and she was never going to get any business from that group. So there's just no point.
Yeah.
Please seek out the people like Tony, like me, and come and send us a DM. We don't care, because that's who Tony and I are. And say, I'm thinking of doing this. I'm based XYZ place in the country. Yeah. And Tony and I are such sad sacks that what we will do is we'll find the relevant audience for you in that town or city. But for us, you don't need to be that parochial anymore, because we're national. We can say, hey, you need to go to Tony because he's in Hull. He can give you grassroots level help, which we can't give because we're too remote. If you want to do a local retail shop, that would be the advice that I would give people. Local market knowledge is absolutely imperative. If you're doing something high street based, I can't say enough, reach out and make that first tiny step to changing, and do it slowly, because you'll start to scare yourself. If it feels uncomfortable, it should do. Yeah. You need to be uncomfortable, else nothing's going to change.
I'll tell you what, it's an aside, but I'm so proud of what you've achieved, Becky, because back in the early noughties, I had a piloted in the UK in about 15, 20 different towns, collaboration between the Prince's Trust, when they used to have an enterprise section just for startups, because they had some very good materials and a lot of good Prince's Trust mentors that were real private sector business people. They were, redundant corporate people. Prince's Trust at that time had a lot of business owners, mentors that were absolutely fantastic in the communities. The enterprise agencies like I'm at, which is Yorkshire in Business, if you like, and the university. So those three in each town work together to provide this complete community, and the results were absolutely fantastic. But of course, when the minister changes, then what's working all changes again. But and that's why I think it's got to be driven by the private sector, because you'll drive something and you'll drive that partnership. Once it's there in the private sector, it's sustainable. If it starts in the public sector with the liaison with the universities or Prince's Trust, various things, it can disappear at the whim of a pen or something. So what you've got is something that's sustainable, and that's fantastic. So we should look up Startup Disruptor. That's the thing we've got to remember to say to everybody. Just Google that, or and get into a Facebook group as a starting off point. What else would you say in terms of neurodiverse people, and maybe you touched on this thing about women in business as well, and role models, and I think that's tremendous. As you know, my inspiration is Kanya King, who regularly talks, founder of Mobo Awards, Kanya King CB, and she's my total inspiration. She communicated something yesterday. I always feel $1 million when I hear from her, and she's just absolutely fantastic. But there aren't many, are there? I mean, I've got a number of friends that are in the public space, but there aren't many. What would you say to the world, really? Because I know you've been on Sky News and BBC and all these different. What should we all be doing as business owners to actually be kind of rebalancing this situation where, it seems incredible to me. I mean, Lord Sugar was once a client of mine, and I think he's absolutely fantastic. Absolutely love him. But it seems almost ridiculous that, Branson and Sugar and are still being held up as role models. In how do we get our own role models for neurodiversity and women in business? What should we be doing as business owners?
Yeah, I think we need to fund them. I think one of the biggest barriers is funding people. What we tend to find is that women are expected to do a lot more for a lot less. Right. So especially when I started out, I was approached by a lot of people and say, we'll do this, but we'll give you, brand equity. It'll raise your brand. It'll get your name out there. And then women end up doing stuff for about a couple of years and not getting paid for it. And then when they do ask to get paid, the door is firmly closed. That's what I learned very early on. And I think we need men to advocate for us, because this isn't about, in order for women or other, however anybody identifies, to win, somebody else has to lose. It's not about that. It's about enabling the playing field to be more level. And unfortunately, at the moment, the women's playing field is a different field. In venture capital, for example, less than 0.01% of funding globally goes to women. So that's something that really needs to change, because if we need the big money to actually to fund, societal change more generally. And also, I think that locally we need to be more adventurous in how we're funding people and take more risks. So we're not great at innovation in the UK. If you look at all the statistical data, which I'm very sad and I like to do, then it's not a great picture of where we sit in terms of innovation in our own country in the UK. And that's very much a mentality that has to change in order for us to be able to compete in Europe and globally. And diversity inclusion is a huge thing in actually marking that change and pushing that agenda forward. So we need to give women a platform to have a voice. So we need to do what we're doing today, Tony, and actually advocate for women. We need to create that space where women feel safe to even comment, because as I said earlier, I'm very resilient, because I've been built that way over 30 odd years, and I've worked in very male dominated market verticals all of my life. I'm often the only woman in the room. I'm often still the only woman invited to have a bit of a laugh at, because everybody thinks I'm quite entertaining with some of the wacky digital/online stuff that I'm talking about, yet they don't know the half of it, of where we're going with technology and the metaverse at the moment. And I think that you can be discredited that way. So we've seen a lot of discrediting of women locally. There's a couple of ways that it's done. So women are traditionally in corporate have either been sluts or nuts. So they've either slept their way to the top, that's the opinion, or they're nuts, that they're discredited through saying, well, their mental health isn't that stable. They're clearly bonkers because they're coming up with this idea. And this is how, my competitors tried to discredit me very, very, very early on. But it comes back to what you're saying. It comes back to reputation. And actually, if somebody steps onto LinkedIn and looks at my profile and my history, it's all there. Since the last 20 years, you can very quickly check out somebody's reputation locally. But I think advocacy is huge. So a couple of things we're doing in Portsmouth is the money that we get through our sponsorship and advertising, we pump back into women's events. So we're for International Women's Day, which should be more than one day, obviously, because we make up over 51% of the population in Britain. But for that week, we're doing some celebration events. And Startup Disruptors is headline sponsoring a Women's Empowerment Day to talk about financial education and open up the doors for women to build confidence in their offerings and ask questions. And the second one is we're headlining the IWP, Inspiring Women of Portsmouth Awards, with a company, a CIC here called Pamodzi Creatives, to actually give a voice to more diversity in the creative industries. So if you have money as a woman, then please give it to another female-led and owned business. Please, because that's really important.
I think this is a bit controversial, I suppose, and I'll get as many haters as you. I do get my fair share actually every single day, but I've always believed. One of the things I've learned most in the last 2 years, which has been absolutely fantastic, really, but it's chilling how bad my behaviour had been before those 2 years. I've learned about casual racism. I've learned about the fact that it's wrong not to speak out. My wife's often gets into street arguments because she will see something and she will call it out. Any type of discrimination, she'll actually call it out. And, various things. And I've now realised, a bit late in life, that that was something I didn't do. But coming to this point, we have to use advocacy. There is actually nothing wrong with, positive discrimination, if you like, to level the playing field. And when we were putting together these 2 days, and I was inviting all the speakers, and I'm with Emma here at Yorkshire in Business, and we're, been putting on this show, I made absolutely sure that there was an advantage in terms of women business owners in the whole program. And what is fantastic is our first event in the McCarthy Theatre with the Shadow Minister for Business and the Chief Executive Forum Private Business, who are both men. There's Jill Poet, who is the Chief Executive of the Organisation for Responsible Business. Janet Jack, who's the CEO of the International Association of Bookkeepers. By the way, every single one of them have been business owners. If you're thinking that they're, all 5 speakers have been business owners, because we only allow business owners to speak on my business there. And Liz Barclay, who is absolutely fantastic, who will probably finish off is Small Business Commissioner now. Again, has been a business owner and various things. And I think it only probably seems a little thing. Nobody will actually notice that that's been done, but you do get blooming fed up, don't you? Going to conference after conference, and you've got 4 blokes on stage. Seriously, I go to so many of them, and it's just like, all white.
Yeah, I think the worst is
from a similar background.
Yeah, the worst is when you get a report on LinkedIn. One of my friends put it up the other day with sort of like an emoji. They just went, oh my God face. We've just appointed a new head of diversity and inclusion who's a white middle-aged man. You just despair, and I think that we're still in that kind of space. But yeah. I think you're right. It is about, there's plenty of reports been done. There's been the Rose report done about women in business. I just want people to know that we're being very clear here, is that if you encourage more women into business and to be successful in business, this actually adds about £180 billion into our economy each year.
Absolutely.
Now, why, oh dear God, why are people not funding female business owners? Because their companies are much more profitable. If you have one female director on your board, one woman, it increases your profitability by 67% as an organisation. Yeah. Now, if you are in business and you like profit and you like numbers, these are the profits and numbers that you should be looking at. But the differential is so great still. We look at, even in venture capital again, women when they pitch are asked different questions to men. Their home lives are questioned. Whether they're even pregnant is being questioned. And this whole agenda has really, really got to change. And it's going to take time.
Absolutely. And it is like casual racism. We have to speak out against it every single day, because the government, and we won't get into politics, but the government are helping us by discriminatory policies that actually get into law. So, for example, out of the 3 million excluded from income support that I've been campaigning for the last 2 years that didn't get either furlough or didn't get the self-employed income support grant, the vast majority, I don't know what the numbers are, 70-80% of them will be women working from home.
Yeah.
Who the government doesn't think have got proper jobs in their businesses, because the messages from the government are get back into the workplace kind of thing. But they're women setting up, bravely setting up enterprising businesses, hardworking taxpayers, that are actually discriminated against by the policies. So it is down to us as business owners to stand up and say this is just wrong.
Yeah, and I think that,
and as you said, the counter argument is if you back everybody, We will have a booming economy. We won't have an economy that's just reliant on the financial sector. We'll have one based on entrepreneurism, which is frankly the case in at least 18 other countries that are above us in terms of that, so you're absolutely right. Yeah, great.
I think we've got to start leveraging the power of the private sector
Yes.
to almost rise against the public sector without sounding too fighty. But,
Yes.
community activism is also my thing. But
Yeah.
if we do it really well, and we do it really well, then all of that government money will come to us eventually, because it'll have to.
Yeah.
Because if we create something that creates a robust economy, that creates jobs for the local community, which creates aspiration for the next generation, which is what we're about, which is what we want to do, then it's going to be a massive shift. Now, other countries are already like this, so this is nothing new. You look at America, you look at Canada, you look at a lot of emerging markets around India and Africa. Nothing is publicly funded. Everything is very entrepreneurial because poverty drives innovation.
And India even treats startups differently from other businesses, so they have different incentives. The cost of regulatory compliance and things isn't there.
Is a whole lot less.
Yeah,
it's markets, and it was strange because when we were holding the physical meetups, we were working with Base Point Business Centres, and we held one in Chichester, and we opened them up for people to come from on Eventbrite, and a couple arrived, and they were actually coaching in Australia. Coaching startups in Australia, and they said, we're on holiday here, we thought we'd pop in, say hi, love the work that you're doing, but we're mystified by it. And I said, why? I said, because in Australia this is all publicly funded.
Yes.
And it's really good, and they really care, and there's preferential rates on funding, there's all this kind of other stuff going on, so we're really mystified why this even has to be a thing. Is this a thing in the UK? And I just explained the whole system of how it works, and they were absolutely flabbergasted. So from our point of view, it's about taking responsibility for our own destiny and actually influencing within our own circles of power and influence, and actually really kind of being the masters or mistresses of our own destiny. And the thing is that if you can make money, the market dictates whether you're successful or not. Not policy.
Exactly.
If you go to market like we did and say, here's the gap, and we're very good at this, then actually people will pay you for it. And then that's a business. So virtual head patting, which is what you're talking about, actually outright misogyny has happened to me a lot, which is I don't even get invited to events. I won't get invited to speak because I'm unpopular. If you don't hear the doors slamming, it means that you're not doing something right.
Absolutely. Definitely.
If you're successful, it will happen. If you're successful, prepare yourself. People ain't gonna like it.
That's why finding a tribe is important, isn't it? Because what we've all got to do is somehow, in order to keep going against all this, adversity at us all the time, is actually we've got to have some people that really do get it around us and realize that this is the only way we can be fulfilling in business terms and fulfilling in life, really, because it's just too important. And I better just stop us both there, because I know we're going to get, when this is shown, we're going to get so much criticism. I won't believe it, but it doesn't matter to us. But I'd just like to go back to mental health just as a last thing, Becky. It's been fantastic. I'd just like to say, how do we as a business community, the NHS and all of the great shit, we've got two problems both going on. We've got enterprise isn't valued at the moment in the UK. So people like you and I that sort of like take a few risks and then we decide, oh, that isn't work, we'll start something. Do you know that kind of whole thing isn't actually understood. So we've got enterprise that isn't respected, and then we've got mental health that is you know, and you've mentioned it, it's in lots of pigeonholes and different things that isn't engaged with real life and is getting on with kind of things. So how do we as a business community, I'm now talking about business owners, startups, business owners, enterprising people, how do we address mental health issues and neurodiversity issues so that we are not held back by waiting for something from public policy or the Googles of this world to come up, you know, big corporate whatever, or the banks to come up with another competition or whatever it is. You know, how do we just get on with life ourselves and solve the problems ourselves so that we you know, we don't need to influence the government to do things. We don't need to lobby, but we can look after ourselves. That's the whole purpose of Microbiz Matters Day. It was us helping each other. So how can we do that with this massive subject of mental health? For mental health for enterprising people, what can we all do as a community to actually sort it out ourselves?
Yeah, so part of our value proposition was we built out a model that was built with Mind, the mental health charity. So what I actually think we should do is actually self-regulate as a community. So I want every neurodiverse person to stop thinking that there's something wrong with them.
Yes. Okay.
And I'll just let that sit there. Yeah. There's my friend. If you're watching this, there's nothing wrong with you. Okay. The problem is for society more generally now, and because we're in the advent of the fourth industrial revolution, let's just take a look at society more broadly at the moment. Facebook is invented by Mark Zuckerberg, who potentially has raging Asperger's. Jack Dorsey, probably the same, inventor of Twitter. Google, invented by people who are neurodiverse. The problem that neurotypical people have at the moment is that the new world is being engineered by neurodiverse people. Right. And neurodiverse people look after neurodiverse people. Look at Gary Vaynerchuk, who's probably, you know, very similar, the Brad Burton of America. For want of a better phrase. Yeah. Massive ADD. So the world now is being amplified by people that are neurodiverse, okay? Right. Yep. This is your time to shine as a neurodiverse person. So don't be afraid of the fact that you've never had that validation before, because you don't need it. You're never going to get it. Yeah. The acceptance you need to have is of who you are, that you accept yourself. And that's really hard for neurodiverse people, having to accept the way that they're built, their mental health limitations, who they are as people, how tired, how conflicted, how paranoid they feel. Right. But that is part of who you are. So that self-awareness is really important. From there, you can actually then devise a business that plays to your mental health strengths. And also, sometimes you need to work part-time because you're just too knackered to do anything else. And that's okay. So don't beat yourself up about any progress is good progress. Small progress is good progress. But I think that we will create a self-regulating environment whereby, you know, and again, we're leading on this with what we're doing in the private sector of saying, we have the mental health tools here from professional services providers. So if you ain't feeling it today, that's fine. Utilize their services. Right. Then eventually we will start to build out a mental health offering as part of our community and a digital online platform that will help with that. We already link with a platform called Paranemo, which has been funded by Innovate UK. So clearly Matthew, who suffered very much with his own mental health, has been funded and validated by Innovate UK funding. So we are starting to see sort of this seeping into funding and other areas, so that there is change happening. But what I would say to anybody watching this is have confidence in yourself and do not be afraid to tell people the way that you are built. So when I first introduce myself, I say, hi, I'm going to dump a load of information on you, probably going to involve a lot of statistics. I'm probably going to talk endlessly about digital stuff you don't understand. If you need to catch up, I'm entirely able to send you a load of stuff later on an email so that you can read through it and process the information, because my brain processes at a rate that only dogs can hear. Yeah. However, there is value in the way that your brain is built. There is value in you as an individual, just as much as there is somebody who's louder And we all know that the emptiest vessels make the most noise. So for introverts, being an introvert is cool, and that's okay. And start to actually have heroes of your own. So look to those neurodiverse people. You know, not everybody likes Zuckerberg, we accept that. But Sheryl Sandberg, who's his COO, is a phenomenal role model for women in technology.
Yeah.
Start to look at her work, start to look at Brené Brown, start to take your inspiration from other countries.
Yeah.
And with the globalization of work being as it is, we can take stock of where we are and actually look through TED Talks for inspiration from other countries, from emerging markets. And business is very different. And you'll have seen this, Tony, with your vast experience. Where you started, all those years ago is very different to how business is going to look in the next 2 decades. And technology will change that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the public sector doesn't have any control over that.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Okay, well, that's great. That's fantastic. I think what I'm inspired by what you're saying is that you've given a lot of hope to a lot of us that actually can get weighed down by the, what can I call it, the bureaucracy and the stagnancy of what people call serious business. Does that make sense? And believe that there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. There is every opportunity for you. And actually, if you look for it, there's a supportive tribe out there that you can reach out to that can actually help you on your way. And don't be afraid to have bits where you just can't do it for whatever reason in that direction. So you might need a little part-time job over here while you're doing this over here or that. But whatever makes you feel confident and comfortable in your tribe, it can be done. And come the revolution, we'll be leading it, Becky. So
yeah, well, I mean, I'm inspired by what you started all those years ago. So, you have to remember that it takes people to stand out and be different, to change things. And if you're the same as everybody else, how do you get any visibility? It's brand exposure and brand identity are actually in you, in who you are. And that reputation is built on that. So you're absolutely right. And Tony, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm totally humbled to be a very small part of
great. It's it's wonderful that our very last Microbiz Matters Day, you're on it, and thank you very much for spending the time, Becky. It's been a real pleasure.
You're welcome. And I'm very blessed to be able to do what I love every single day. So thank you for the opportunity. And to anybody in the wider network, please get in touch if there's anything that Tony or I can do to help or direct. We're more than happy between the two of us to lead on that if you feel that we can be of any help at all. But I'm blessed to know you, Tony. Thank you so much for being in my life. I really do appreciate everything that you do for me.
Hey, thank you very much indeed.